3D racing games were a thing of beauty in the arcades during the 90s. The earliest versions of 3D racing games look like craftily cut tofu. You can clearly see the polygons here. Some of the most notable entries in this genre are Hard Racing, Virtua Racing, and Sega Rally. Formula Retro Racing World Tour takes the iconic visual of the 90s and runs with it. What does Formula Retro Racing World Tour do though to be more than just eye candy for people who yearn for a simpler time like me? World Tour is a sequel to Formula Retro Racing developed by Repixel 8. Formula Retro Racing World Tour fuses the pick-up-and-play simplicity of 90s style arcade racing with realistic physics, split-screen multiplayer, 60 FPS, and 4K resolution. My experience was buttery smooth on the PlayStation 5 and had no issues with performance. World Tour introduces new tracks and car types for additional level of depth. You'll race through iconic global locations, compete against other drivers, and try to beat your own lap times. World Tour has 4 modes: Arcade, Grand Prix, Eliminator, and Free Practice. There are plenty of tracks here, each with their iconic set pieces. Tracks are unlocked by points which you receive after you're standing in a race. The amount of points is also affected by the difficulty. It's cool to see memorable architecture, for example, seeing the Eiffel Tower in Paris, Buckingham Palace in London, and the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. There's a lot of charm seeing these works of art being portrayed in a 90s 3D aesthetic. That's to say, they look like tofu. Tracks vary between traditional ovals and consecutive hairpin turns. While I had no problem with the design of the tracks, I did not enjoy how long these races last. Some of them lasted up to 6 minutes, way too long for driving in one track. Do note that arcade tracks have a fixed amount of laps, while the Grand Prix mode allows the players to change the amount of laps right before a race. Some tracks catered more to a certain type of car. For tracks with straightaways and soft turns, I always went with the F1-like high-performance cars. Tracks with numerous turns and smaller lanes were made for the drifting muscle cars. If you're telling me I'm not going to Tokyo drift in Tokyo, you're straight out of here. Get out. The OST is a well-made bop. Nothing that I will listen to in my car, but it fits the occasion of high-speed racing. The tracks don't loop well into each other, and there's a bit of a void before the track restarts. The sound effects are solid and helps up the type of cars, crashes, and turns that you'll be proceeding in your brain. Nothing here is super high or very low. The sound makes the game enjoyable, but nothing stuck with me after I left the game. As long as the cars don't sound like lawnmowers, I'm definitely good with how everything else here sounds. There are 2 different types of cars. There are the high-performance race cars and muscle cars that can drift through corners. Each of the 2 car classes have 5 variations, 5 different single-seater style formula cars, including touring, rally, and cigar, and 5 muscle cars with throwback vehicles spanning from the 40s to the 90s. Each car handles uniquely, making each track feel different. It's up to you to find the best lines and braking points for each vehicle. I definitely gravitated towards the high-performance F1 race cars. Their high handling and speed made races much more enjoyable for me, and I was never able to actually get down the drifting mechanic for the muscle cars, and it almost got a little bit nauseated in beating in first person in a muscle car. I lost my train of focus, and I thought I was going to roll over. I wish there were stat bars when choosing cars to see the difference in handling, acceleration, top speed and turning, kind of basic statistics that you would see in any racing game, but it's alright. It's excellent to have a variety of cars and even more colors to choose from. Felt great to change my car up for the next race. Never felt great when I bashed my car on the wall too many times and blew up. Felt great to rear end other cars though and make them explode. Formula Retro Racing World Tour is an excellent piece of work that uses the visuals and simplicity of the 90s and builds upon it. They even got slipstreaming and physics in this bad boy, mechanics that you see in modern racing games. It's an excellent retro racer and made for those who love the genre from the 90s. I've always loved Daytona, and it's nice to play another game that gives me a rolling start. I highly recommend this if you enjoyed Virtua Racing, Ridge Racer, Daytona, and anything that's like that with the 90s visual. Formula Retro Racing World Tour is available on Steam, Xbox One, PS4, PS5, and Switch for $19.99 US. Thank you to Press Engine for providing a review key, and you homies for sticking around till the end. I always appreciate your support, and as always, have a veggie day. See you in the next video, homies.